Hey guys, thank you very much for your time. I hope you're doing well. And what we're going to discuss here is creating PTZ Flyaway kits from myself with Panasonic, and we're going to cover a range of different things inside this session. So what we're going to do is an introduction to Panasonic. So it's really nice for CVP to have us hosted on here, and obviously this is a new way of doing things with the current situation. Who we are, the different things that we do, and we'll then go into looking into what PTZs are. You might have heard of it a lot. You might be familiar, you might not be familiar. So we'll just see a bit of a refresher on that, and also how it's working with some of our other technologies. We'll look at robotics, NDI, and also some automated tracking software that we do, and how that can also be incorporated into flyaway kits to increase production value. And we'll just look at some kind of systems examples for PTZs and kits as well, and with a Q&A with myself and my colleague Ollie as well, who's also in the chat. So just an introduction to myself. My name is Dean Offord. I'm a sales engineer for Panasonic Europe, and I am basically responsible for PTZs technically. And I have a lot of different experiences with PTZs in all forms, and I can safely say no 2 days are the same. But I do come from more of a music background, and I can say before the lockdown, I did very much enjoy going to gigs and also playing gigs, and sadly can't do that either, but I can still drink beer, thankfully. So it's, I've very much seen lots of different projects, lots of different things with remote cameras, and remote cameras have only been around for 10 years now, but they've had such a big impact on the market and the way that we do things in live events. And just an introduction to Panasonic broadcast as well. I think there's a bit of a misconception with Panasonic sometimes. Although we're a Japanese company, it's been around since 1918. It's had some rapid changes, especially in broadcast, Pro AV, and live events. And ISE 2020 was our last big trade show, and we actually had an esports arena on our stand, and we're doing competitions for people to come up and play, and we're demonstrating all the different cameras that we're going to talk about in this session. Projectors and displays can be incorporated, and that Panasonic actually can supply end-to-end all of those elements for a live event. So Panasonic as a company is quite amazing in the way that it's changing, adapting, it's listening to the market quite closely, and we're forever expanding what we do. So first, PTZs and camcorders. So Panasonic is quite widely known, I'd say, in the CVP circles for these products in particular. So GH5, Lumix S1, EVA 1, and VariCam LT. And a lot of our Cine products are used quite heavily. And this is a really, really great area of our business, and there are different sections within the departments that deal with these things. But where actually I'm coming from within the broadcast side, we're actually even more known for these in circles. And the great thing about PTZs is whether you know it or not, you would have seen them in action some way or somehow. And if you think of a lot of different reality shows like Love Island or First Dates or these kind of shows, you'll be able to see it. Slides are supposed to be changing. Nick, so I'll just check. Let's see. Second. There we go. Can you see this now?
It's the same slide right now.
There we go.
Yeah, there
Is this still stuck on the same slides?
No.
Yeah, that's changed.
There we go. Oh.
There we go. Are they changing?
Yeah, they're changing now, yeah.
Happy days. So that probably made no sense then a minute ago. And can you see the screen here?
So
the esports stage.
Yep.
Happy days. All right. Sorry, there's my face, by the way. I was going to try and do some camera work, but it didn't really work. So yeah, just covering back, the sidetracked a bit. So yeah, whether you've watched some reality shows, whether it's again Love Island or these kind of things, you would have seen PTZ somewhere. And they're also in parliaments, all sorts at the moment, like Spanish Parliament, TV, and this kind of stuff are using PTZs quite heavily. And PTZs are really, really popular for a very, very good reason. And I would say in Panasonic, from our point of view, it's one of our biggest selling market segments as well. We do have traditionally some of the highest market share in regions as well, because we've got such an extensive lineup of them, and they're used in so many different gigs, and within the circle of the gig economy, they can be deployed very, very quickly and easily. And a lot of the questions that we get as Panasonic, and what I get personally when I'm doing trade shows or events, is PTZs, they're taking away jobs, right? That's the first thing I get, specifically Ireland for some reason. But it's not at all. We still do a lot of camcorders, and actually we call them sister products. They work side by side. And if anything, PTZs are great because it really does help enhance the production value of your gigs. And what's nice about it is that you can have a much smaller team managing many cameras at one time. So what that does is the way that we can use Flyaway, the Flyaway concept, to set up many cameras at once, have a smaller crew to operate, pat them down and go on to the next job, is really, really, really good. And we're going to look at how the camcorders as well can be used in this Flyaway setting in conjunction with the PTZs. And I think there's a lot of fear of PTZs personally, because I think people sometimes feel they're too complicated, but I can explain how they're a lot easier to use. And this is the exact concept that we're talking about. And, thankfully CVP does a lot of these different elements in these products, because these are the things that we're familiar day to day. And from our point of view, we do the cameras, we can do controllers, vision mixers, and we also do some robotics that can be packed away for Flyaway. And also, you've got the guys like Blackmagic that use lots of different encoders and decoders and things. So the goal with Flyaway is to try and get as much kit as we can that can create the maximum production value, but also easy to move, set up and maintain, because the key to Flyaway is actually our most precious commodity is time. And how do we manage our time, and how can we get maximum value from our jobs that we do? And so I put kind of a little circle of life of AV from my point of view. Smaller crew to manage, but the cameras, controllers, vision mixers, the platforms, encoders and decoders in between. And also, most importantly, is audio. Audio is constantly the thing that's always overlooked, and it could be the make or break of, let's say, a live stream. If you're setting up in this Flyaway environment, let's say you've got a customer that's actually, got a series of events that needs to be recorded, set up quickly and packed down, and you've only got a limited resource. We have the products that can actually help do that as well. And I can't stress enough the audio element of a good live stream. So, I'm Panasonic. I'm waffling about it, and obviously quite biased. But the case studies that we do, like if you want to see a little bit more of actually some of the things that I've just talked about, the Gothenburg Symphony Orchestra are using PTZs right now in a Flyaway setup and some robotics. So what they're doing is they're setting them up for different events. They're putting them on things like dollies, and they're connecting them to the network, and they're able to get different shots every time they do a stream, because they can just set up the cameras easily by moving them. And the other good key thing here is that without camera operators as well in the way, let's say for a camcorder setting, you're not killing seats necessarily. The cameras are quite discreet, they have a small footprint, and you can get them close to the action as well. And in this case, they're so close to an orchestra. I can tell you the audio sound guys are the most let's say specific people about what they can hear on the stage itself. But the cameras are either fanless, or they've got very, very low fan noise, whereas it's barely heard. So there's a really good video on that, which I highly recommend to go check it out, because it's the actual guys using it day in, day out that can tell you about it. Another really good example is if you go to any theatre in London, sadly you're not going to be able to right now, there's King's Place Theatre, and it's a similar kind of thing. They're mainly using it for a fixed installation, but this is just proving here that you can take the PTZs, you can set them up quickly, let's say on a tripod, you can plug them into a network, start controlling them, and then you can pack them away and do it again. So again, this is another example of a Flyaway kit. And with Panasonic PTZs, again, as a manufacturer of PTZs, and one of the largest, we do have a pretty extensive range, and this isn't a product presentation for you, because I'm not going to do a corporate waffling at you, but to give you an overview, if you are familiar with some of the model numbers or not, it's just giving you an idea of what's available in 4K or HD. What is the deliverable from the client? what is the expectation, we can do that. And again, it's being able to have the 4K or HD form factors that can be easily deployed. And then on the bottom row, you've got different controllers for different types of operation. It could be a compact operator or a much more live events, let's say gigs focused operation that's needed, and that would be RP150 because it's on air. And then we also do tons of free stuff, free software constantly to help control many cameras at one time, or we do auto tracking software, which we're going to take a look at too. To demystify what all these very Japanese model numbers mean, left to right, these are kind of a ballpark figure of what it looks like. And the UE4, for example, these were used for the esports cameras of the players at ISC 2020. And I would say, you know, if you're looking at churches or things like this, these are a little bit more fixed installations. These model numbers here are a bit more entry level. They're typically HDMI connections on the entry level stuff. If you're looking at SDI, the mid range, and this is where Flyaway is used most heavily, you're looking at the HE42s, the UE70s, either HD or 4K cameras, which can be set up, get great image quality, packed down and sent into the next job. And then the 130 and the 150 are both extremely very, very good low light sensitive cameras. And that's why they're so predominantly used in studios and theatres. And also a great thing about that UE150, which has been around for a year now, that supports something called the 3D protocol. And that means that we can use that PTZ in augmented or virtual reality. And if you now compare that to, you know, let's say other ways of doing virtual cameras, this is a very small form factor 4K PTZ with a 1-inch sensor that can actually help display can help generate the content for graphics engines. If you think of VizRT and those guys, zero density, this PTZ is used very, very heavily. At the HR140, if you ever have an outdoor job in mind, we actually do integrated PTZs for that. So those, in a Flyaway example, are deployed for festivals, or, you know, in news, we can set them up outside on trucks and things like that. So it's quite easy. Another fun thing as well is that again, people are familiar with GH5 and S1, EVA 1 and Vericam LT, and PTZs are like the nerdier department. We do support V-Log in the UE150. So again, 4K 60p camera, a 75.1 degree wide angle lens, can actually output V-Log. And that's full V-Log as well. So if you're talking about color matching, if you're concerned about, you know, matching it with your Sony FS7s or things like this, or the different cameras that you might have in your production, you do have a lot of control in the color in post-production if you wanted to. And this is 100% a production camera. The predecessor to this camera was the camera next to it is the HE130. If you've ever watched something like Louis Theroux's Scientology documentary, you'll see a ton of those PTZs in action. So there's a myth that PTZs don't look very good in a production environment, but no, they can absolutely be graded and they can look very, very good. And talking about the controllers themselves, again, every single PTZ camera out of the box, you can just use the web interface built inside. So if it's a case of just positioning it, you can just set it up on your tripod or your robotic leg, and away you go. You can activate the presets and you can use the software like that. Otherwise, the smaller PTZ controller is good for very small Flyaway kits. Some people, what they do is they put them in the flight cases with the monitor. It looks really, really nice. And with the RP150, they might put it into a much larger Flyaway kit on wheels to go deploy. The HLC100 we're going to look in particular is actually an NDI switcher and a controller in one. That's developed in partnership with NewTek. So it has a lot of really, really good features, but it's very much optimized for Panasonic PTZ sides. And we do call that the portable live production center. It's used in all sorts of things. And then the auto tracking that we can activate with the PCs as well. Another really good way to do it is that we have really amazing third-party partners that we do work with. And the nice thing about PTZs and this area is that it's not so proprietary, right? We don't have really specific standards that you must meet to be able to use it. In fact, we encourage the opposite. We encourage to work with lots of different manufacturers to bring together solutions. Scarhoy have made this RCP, and it's amazing because they've actually implemented PTZ control as well as the paint control as well. And you can do that on the PTZs or the camcorders. So you can select different cameras over IP and use color control settings and camera control in one. So this is a really good example of a more affordable RCP that can be used in the field. Is the frame stuck still? Let's see.
It's on the slide. Okay, there we go.
There we go. Just thanks, guys, keeping me going. Right. So can you see the Scarhoy panel here? It's like a God. It's such an interactive presentation we're in here now. Nice one. Right. So yeah, it's a very, very cool RCP. I do highly recommend checking it out. Another really good example of some of the kit that we've used from our experience is like the Atomos Sumo 19 monitors. We know many big rental companies that deploy these constantly, and they brought out a firmware update not too long ago, 2019, called asynchronous switching. And Lewis Brown took me over from Atomos to go check this out, and he hooked it up with one of the PTZs. And it's an amazing way that you can connect 4 different PTZs, and you can switch and mix and record the live feeds and do the outputs. And you can use the camera, our camera controller, just to position the cameras. And then the Atomos Sumo 19 monitor can actually do a lot of the production elements inside. So this is, again, another really good example of the way that you can scale the PTZ, either for small deployment or large deployment, or maybe you're on a budget. I agree. I'm actually using a Sumo 19 right now in the background, and I use it for many different things. So it's extremely good, and it's part of a firmware update as well. So again, hand in hand with PTZs, it's really nice. So that's kind of an overview, a little taster of introduction to PTZs, or a refresher. We've got lots of different content on more PTZs where you can just ask Ollie and me if you want to learn a lot more about that. We're happy to talk about it because we talk about it 24/7. But we're going to look a little bit more especially now, because we're in 2020, and in the next 10 years, we're in an ever-changing world, and we're going to have to be much more resource efficient and try and increase our production value. Again, if you're a freelancer or an operator, what different ways can you enhance your productions? And also take on, more work more efficiently. And that includes the robotics, NDI, and auto tracking software. So we brought out a Panasonic. You might be familiar with our friends at Polcam. Polcam are, flyaway specialists. They are absolutely everywhere in kind of live events. They're known for their jibs, and you would have seen it one way or another. So we had a really great partnership with Polcam to expand on one of their products, and we asked them, basically, they had a robotic totem, and we wanted to control it from our Panasonic controllers, and we wanted to put the PTZs on it, because don't get me wrong, I love a good tripod, but the trouble with tripods and PTZs is that they can take up some footprints. They're not great for every occasion, because you have to deploy them. They take up a lot of room sometimes. With the higher payload, we can, as you can see in this picture, we can fit 4 PTZs. And the great thing about this leg is that it's modular. It fits into that flight case, what you see there, apart from the base plate at the bottom, but that fits into a flight case and can be set up, and it goes up to 3 meters. And so it comes with different foot pedals and things, which I'll show you in a minute. And this was the main thing. You can move the leg up and down using the Panasonic controller. And the guys at Polcam very cleverly tricked the controller into, or tricked the leg into being a PTZ. So we can use different preset positions. Preset positions are where you're saving a camera position and telling it exactly to go with precise accuracy. But with the Panapod leg, what you can do is put your cameras on, save camera 3 as the Panapod itself, and then you can move it up to 3 meters, and then you can capture the action that you want to. So again, this is Gothenburg Symphony Orchestra are using this because you can actually combine it with the dolly. So it's great. You can use the joystick to move the camera physically up and down as well. So you've got this whole y-axis of being able to increase the actual production value from the PTZs as well, instead of just being stuck, being fixed. And I said modular before, so basically you can have one leg or two legs. One leg goes up to 1.5 meters with the cameras on, or it can go up to 3 meters, which is quite high. And again, it's very, very deployable inside here. So you can already start to envision that you can have your robotic leg, you can have your PTZs in another flight case, you got your multi-viewers and monitors and things in another. So it's starting to really scale down the equipment, but also look very, very professional. And if you wanted another leg later, let's say you just wanted one for 1.5 meters for a lot of talk shows or something, you can then upgrade it later to 3 meters. So it's very, very easy. And it comes with this crossbar. Everything you see here, it comes with all these accessories. And we also have different dollies as well. So if you want the cameras to be moving, you can do that. If you want the heavier base plate for it to be more secure, let's say it's a little bit of an odd surface, we can do that. And if you want the multiple PTZs instead of just one, then you can just get a crossbar attachment as well. And I see in the question from Adam as well about a rail. So I will show you, we actually do something on a rail, maybe not for a ski slope, but we do have an answer to that. Also, just to say about these, it's not just for PTZs, by the way. You can put lights on this, you can put speakers, you can put all sorts of things with it, with the payload. So the weight itself, I think with 2 legs, you're looking at around 25 kilos, okay, which is quite heavy. That's for 2 legs, and it can take more with 1 leg. So not just cameras, very, very versatile. You can put it with lots of different things. So another thing as well is, like I said, with camcorders, people think there's this really sad assumption that PTZs replace camcorders. I say there couldn't be a better partnership between the two. The great thing about camcorders is now with NDI-HX, we put a network connector on the camcorder itself. It's one of the very few camcorders, if not, I don't think there are still many camcorders at all in the market that can support NDI-HX. What we mean by this is that we can control the zoom, the focus, and the iris using an NDI capable product. So if you're thinking of TriCasters or things like this, or our HLC 100 product, then you can actually move it at the same time with the PTZs. And why is that good? Well, a couple of reasons. You've got a portable camcorder that you can use to record some other shots, behind the scenes or what have you, and then you can set it up as another PTZ in your arsenal. So it's a 1-inch 4K sensor, this particular one, and it's very, very good in low light with a very wide lens integrated, and we can control that from a desk. And we also just brought out now, I think it's just started shipping now, CX10, which again is like it's like a very small PTZ in itself, but it's 4K capable, and this has the network connectivity as well with the NDI-HX support as well. And that's again the smaller runner gun kind of camcorder, which is good to have in a Flyaway arsenal, and it's got a light on it, so if you do need to capture some other contents or something behind the scenes, you can just take it out and do it. Then you can use it as another additional PTZ without the movement later. And the CX350 is a much more beefy version of this as well. So it's 2 very good options. It covers the audio, the light, and the capture part of the element and the networking with the NDI. And also, if you are an operator in a Flyaway situation, you will also appreciate more tools where you could repurpose things like iPads. You can use ROP settings. We can get a dongle for the camcorder to make them wireless, and then we can use these types of apps as well. So live, we have really, really great control. And this ROP app works for lots of our different cameras as well. But for the camcorders, it's especially helpful to have as part of your Flyaway kit. NDI, good friend Liam at NewTek is doing talks on NDI, so I'm not going to butcher it for him. But NDI and NDI-HX, if you are familiar or not, is an incredibly popular standard now. From the time that I've seen in 6 years, it's amazing to see how much it's grown. And Panasonic, as an NDI supporter, we have the most amount of products that actually support NDI as a manufacturer, we're quite proud to say, because we could see the potential of this protocol. If you're not familiar with NDI, in short, it's basically trying to replicate SDI or HDMI quality over an Ethernet cable. And the great thing about the PTZs is we can actually set up 2 cables to set them up. So we can take the SDI cable, which runs 100 meters, and we can take a network cable, which runs 100 meters as well. That network cable with the PoE switch can actually power the PTZs over the Cat5 cable too. So you imagine you've got two 100-meter runs, but you can eliminate that SDI cable by running NDI, just taking a network cable, plugging it into the camera. You've got your power, your video, your control, and even tally signals you can use all at once. And there's two flavors of NDI in particular. There's NDI standard, or high bandwidth NDI, as people seem to be calling it now, or NDI HX. These are very approximate data rates, and again, Liam will be able to explain these a lot more in detail, so I recommend seeing this from his session, but this is some information that I got. And NDI HX is, again, a much lower bit rate, and I don't think people should be put off by hearing the term lower bandwidth or higher bandwidth. It just means that on your network, if you're putting a lot of video content over a network cable, you can risk potentially flooding the network. So depending on your different types of network switches, if you're putting 4K over a network, you'll need native NDI. If you're putting HD and you have many different cameras that want to run NDI at the same time, then NDI HX might be a little bit more feasible to do that. And NDI HX is still an incredibly good protocol. A lot of people think that it's lower bandwidth, it must be less quality. Well, in theory, yes, but I'll show you where actually it's there's a really good advantage to NDI HX. And also more free stuff. NDI do studio monitor, they do virtual camera, where we can actually take an NDI camera and turn it into a webcam, essentially. We can use scan converter to turn our PCs into NDI sources, and we can pull them into TriCasters or HLC 100. And that's it. So any Panasonic NDI capable product will work with these tools for free. And we use them every day pretty much in different scenarios. So for Flyaway, again, having a single cable setup is super important, and I'll show you in a diagram. If you don't believe me on NDI HX story, we'll put our money where our mouth is. So the Supreme Court of London in the UK, if we all remember, Boris got in trouble back in September for doing something a bit illegal. So the Supreme Court actually implemented a TriCaster TC1 system, as well as our HU130 NDI HX PTZs. And yeah, maybe not so much in a Flyaway situation, but again, this is talking about cameras that are very, very discreet, and they were able to do it. And everything that you saw that was broadcasted on the BBC and these big broadcast channels, this was using hardware and software from Panasonic and NewTek to deliver, and a lot of it is being done over NDI. So it's a very good video case study on that if you want to learn a little bit more. And also just to say, we can say exclusively here, I guess, us and NewTek as well will certainly be doing more conversations together about how our products work with NDI and discussing all flavors of NDI. And we're looking at the moment of the 14th of May, so maybe just keep tuned for that. So there'll be some really nice things to talk about there. If you've got some products that you don't want to, well, let's say you want to go up from NDI HX to NDI, both the PTZs and the camcorders also support simultaneous output. So that means you can take SDI runs if you wanted to, but the HDMI is always active. And although we don't like boxes so much or additional pieces of kit, the NDI Connect Spark Pros can take a 4K 60p feed, and then it can still give you that NDI video signal. So if you do have an NDI project and you wanted to use our PTZs and you think, it's only NDI HX and I need NDI, there are definitely ways that you can do both of them together. And Nick Long, can you embed audio into PTZ camera feeds of NDI runs? Yeah, absolutely. Our cameras support 3.5mm audio inputs. I know it's not the best audio input version, but we can take the audio and embed it directly into NDI. NDI is video audio that can be all wrapped into one as well. Looking at our system, I talked a lot about TriCaster. It's a fantastic product. We did one with the HLC 100. Panasonic was asked quite a lot, you know, you do all the cameras, but do you actually do something? I want to do lots of events and I want to be able to deploy it, and I need a multi-viewer, and I want to mix NDI sources with SDI and HDMI. So we decided to do one, and working with NewTek, we can do that. So it's a 1ME PTZ camera controller, audio mixer, and a switcher at the same time. And again, it's very similar. It's a hybrid PC switcher controller, but again, it's optimized more for us with a very small footprint that can be used for PTZs primarily. And you've got the basic audio input. This is perfect for covering a wide range of different events at once. And you can just put it in a flight case, take it around, and plumb it into whatever events you need. And the good thing about it being a hybrid PC is that we can take in video MP4s, or we can take... Oh, frozen again. Hang on. What are we on now? I have to shake it up.
On
there we go.
Choosing our controller, mixer, and system.
There you go. Right. How about now?
And that's it's on the same slide. It's on choosing our controller, mixer, and system. That one.
Happy days. I love it. Right. Let's try this. Right. Let me go live again, guys, just to make sure this is working. How about now? Okay.
We've got a rear view picture.
Yeah, we got the rear. Right. So here's the rear of the HSC 100s. So like I was just saying, it's good because we can take video MP4s or things like this. We can plumb it straight into the HSC 100 and put it into our content workflow. So it's, yeah, hello Discord. Yeah, so we can do that. And it's got two LAN connectors where we can split the data rates as well. So we can accept a lot of different sources, NDI sources. The good thing about this as well is we can take up to eight NDI feeds, or we could do a split between 4 SDI or 4 NDI, so you can mix and match lots of different parts. So just to give you an overview of what that looks like, you've got the PTZ camera control, switcher, audio sources, and let's say we can even use Skype TX. If you wanted to have different guests call in and do it remotely, then we can do that as presenters and mix it all into one, and then do our live streaming output into, you know, different platforms. So that's it. Again, from a Flyaway standpoint, it's trying to make it as easy as possible. It's that one unit. The only external thing about that is the power supply that it comes with. But you can easily put that into a case, and you can go and send it off and do lots of different things and do some live streaming. Let's say we've got this product coming out, which is going to be very big in rental. And I say rental one specifically because it's our first 12G SDI mixer, which is 4K capable.
Have you changed slide again, Dean? Because it's on rear view.
I did.
Still.
Strange. I'll tell you what, guys, I'm going to try something a little bit different here. I think I know what's going on. So let me move this, and let's try my screen here. It might be because it doesn't like a second screen. Right. Here we go. 2 secs, guys. So let's give this one a go. So hopefully you can see my screen now. Let's see.
So that'll be you streaming just Discord if you select. Oh, there we go. We're in presentation. Cool. So
Happy days.
Try go full screen now. That may work.
How about now?
No, it's not full screen.
Cool. Let's try. You can see it now, right? So let's try this one. Screens. I'm just going to share this screen. Right. You can see this? And you can see this now, right?
Yep, perfect.
Perfect. We're back on. Right. So maybe you missed that screen. So yeah, there's different cameras, Skype TX, program audio. So again, that's an entire, if you're doing a live event, we can just do it this way, take our outputs, and we can plumb it into something else. And that's it. So it is designed small form factor, multi-camera production, away you go. And this was the 4K mix that I was talking about. Again, might be not necessarily, it's more in the rental phase, but 12G support. We are going to have different cards and attachments that are going to be able to connect to the mixer to expand it even more. But it also does have full remote camera control support inside, so you can actually trigger the presets. You can do the positioning of the cameras with the joystick. So it's going to be, I think it's a really exciting product because it's incorporating for Flyaway, again, sending that out, having complete 4K signal. 4K 60p signal or using 12G workflows, and then having the camera control on top is really, really nice. And it's got multi-format support at the same time. So for live events, it's going to be awesome, I think. Auto tracking. So we do a flavor of auto tracking. It's traditionally known for in our education circles, and what it does is it's converting our Panasonic cameras into basically the tracking cameras over IP. So bear with me on this one. I know this is going to sound a little bit complicated. So what we can do is my laptop or your laptop, we can download a software from our website. You can start running it. And what it does is over a network, it's telling the camera where to go based on upper body detection. And it's actually got facial recognition inside the software. And what it's doing is very clever. It's taking one of the JPEG IP streams out of the PTZ. And in real time, the software is telling the camera where to go over the network. You'd be amazed how quick and accurate it is in that real time. And what it does is it looks a little bit like this. It wouldn't be a Panasonic presentation without a Japanese person somewhere. So we've got a box for the motion detection, which is in red. We've got the facial recognition, which is yellow, and blue is the final target position. So why on earth would you use this in a Flyaway example? Actually, I do a lot of talks about this. So in PTZ events, this is a very typical setup, and we're just combining some of the other things that I talked about, like the Panapod, the ability to move it up 3 meters in the air. So you're then avoiding the audience shots in the background, but you can have 2 cameras on the side. Now, what a really big classic mistake is that you've got an operator that's spending most of their time tracking, let's say, a speaker and a presenter, because people want their conferences live streamed quite a lot, or their keynote events a lot, which is a big area. And it might be in a remote location. We waste our time doing the tracking shots of the movement or the panning of the movement of the headshots. And you've got these 2 other cameras which are just stuck there. But what you could do is you could set up the software on the PC just to have the middle camera doing the boring panning shots, capturing the movement. Then the 2 cameras on either side, you could be framing up for Q&A from the audience, or you could be framing up for some nice shots to mix between using the HC 100 or the TriCaster, whatever you got there. And all you need is the PC connected on the same network. And you can run NDI at the same time. So it's not compromising that. And that adds to your production value massively, because you can actually cut in some really nice live shots. Instead of having the operator waste their time bounce between on the panning shot. The software is very capable of doing that. And just to give you a little workflow example of how that looks, this is what I typically do. You could either take it into a capture card, you could do it over network, but again, it's just highlighting that software can run on a PC or a server, and it's controlling the PTZ cameras at the same time, and then it's outputting. So it's really, really good. It's really, really deployable, and we use it a lot. Again, if you want to actually learn a little bit more about that, this is one of the biggest Flyaway examples ever done. This was in the US. They had 63 PTZs, and they basically captured every event that was happening at the same time, because it wasn't realistic enough to try and capture all of the presenters at the same time. But what we did was we combined the servers with the auto tracking software to control the PTZs at once, and it was a very small crew to cover 63 events, because and again, there was lots of different technologies lost, lots of different technologies used, but we didn't lose a lot of resources at the same time. We managed to keep a very high production value, and this was great because we were able to capture every seminar very simply. And there was lots of still behind the scenes using different cameras and things like this. So it's a very good example. So I've covered the some more now. Maybe you didn't have maybe you didn't know about those different softwares that are available before, but we can do that, and the robotics are even more accessible. So we're just going to look at some examples for the Flyaway events themselves. This event was done with New Tech, and this is just demonstrating with Red Shark that we could set up for an event for an afternoon. And this is, again, the exact technologies that I was talking about, with 2 PTZs, a camcorder, had a remote camera controller. I used the HLC 100 for mixing, but the TriCaster TC1 did actually most of the output. And we used them in tandem, and I had the studio monitor NDI free application running as my monitor for the talking heads. And again, this is exactly what Flyaway is all about. And it was very quick and easy to set up. It was just me and Ollie in this case. And here's just rounding up some of the things that I was talking about. So different examples I've put in the Scarhoy control panel if we wanted to, because that's IP capable. We've got the HSC 100. We can use the 2 Atomos monitors if we want to for multi-viewer program. You can remove some other elements. You can chop and change. But this is just a very basic footprint of what we can do. And then we could add the auto tracking elements on top of that. So you can see this how you will. This is literally everything that you would need to be able to deliver an event. And if you're talking about live Flyaway and you talk about NDI workflows, this is exactly it. You're just removing the SDI. You're taking that 100-meter network Cat5 cable, and you're still taking the video, being able to mix it and control it and do all this kind of stuff at the same time, and then having a final production output. House of worship of small corporates, you know, the Blackmagic A10 Mini is a fantastic little switcher. You could also include that next to the Panasonic camera controllers. Maybe you just want to use the free software to keep the costs down. Maybe you want to plug into the video matrix that might be existing, so you need less of a footprint. Churches are like really on the rise, and small corporates, because especially in the current situation, having camera equipment that you can access remotely and even over IP, which we're going to be talking about a lot more in the next coming weeks, is really, really important. And I think we're going to see this a lot more, because you can actually achieve a degree of remote production no matter what. And I know that I understand at the moment churches are really struggling with this, because they still want to do live streaming of some form. And we've even seen in London some churches actually doing communal raising for PTZs, which is absolutely astounding. But it's because they have very limited volunteers, but the kit is easy to use for them to actually do it. So this is, again, a maximum example, but you can take away lots of different elements and change them how you want to. Corporate AV, this is very typical. This is, again, a very fixed installation. It's very similar to what I've already talked about. But we're talking about the CX350 there, which is the camcorder that can be roaming and added in as another PTZ if you wanted to. Live events, UHS 500. You can have other, which is a 4K mixer, 12G mixer, 12G going into the Atomos. And you can combine this into many different ways. You can have up to 5 different other control panels connected on the same network. So you can actually have multiple operators. They can be controlling the Panapod legs, moving them up and down, the camcorder or the PTZs themselves. And then you can be streaming it with a live view package. We are also going to be talking a lot more about remote production to deploy the cameras on site and things. So that'd be quite an exciting talk that we're planning at the moment. Guys, that, apart from the technical issues, that was that. And I just wanted to leave some time as well for the Q&A. But I do really appreciate you guys coming to watch this and take some time out your day to see. And I hope it was informative. So the best part about these presentations is actually just to have a discussion as well. So please do feel free to ask questions and things, and Ollie and me will also help. So yes, thank you.
Awesome, dude. I think there's a few questions, I think, throughout the Discord chat.
C'est fini ici, le truc.
Cool. Stop sharing my screen. I'll go on video actually.
All right, dude.
Let's give that a go. Cool. Or maybe not. Do you know what? I'm not going to tempt fate at the moment.
Okay.
A copy of the slide deck. Yeah, absolutely. I can give you this PDF. I'm happy we're happy to hand that over. That's absolutely fine. Blackmagic switcher used in conjunction with Panasonic PTZs. I think
Yeah,
I can see Ollie's absolutely on it.
yeah, Ollie
on
has
the
been on
questions
it.
Doing what I can.
too.
And Dean,
So
there was a question on the rail system as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Let me just pull this up for you guys. 2 seconds. And at the same time, talking technical, how reliable is all this technology? Happened in the past, NDR not showing up and restart software, or the computer not finding the ATEM switcher. Are there any basics to look out for with live streaming? In my experience, the issues typically come in for the network configuration. So I, as Panasonic, my God, the amount of times that we've done shows and events, and we're having IP frame drops, or something's not synchronizing, or there's some sort of delay. Using IP technologies, it is typically the configuration of the network which I found. How much data is being pushed down the pipe? How many cameras are connected on that are all firing as much data as they can at the same time, and the network is beginning to flood. These kind of things, typically in IP workflows, is what I see constantly, and that's it. I'd say the most reliable way of this technology, I would say, is incredibly reliable. The key is in the configuration. So take the time to set your IP addresses, set your cameras, set your formats, put it all together. And once you're there, all you're doing is you're connecting into the, let's say on site, there's going to be an audio matrix, or there's going to be a PA system or something like this. You're connected to the audio desk, taking your feeds. That's where a lot of the time you should be focusing on, is connecting to other external equipment. But the equipment itself, if it's already pre-configured, you shouldn't have issues. So I would say it's very noticeable if it hasn't been pre-configured. If it has been pre-configured, you're still having issues externally, something might be going on. And again, like I said, Liam's in this chat as well from NewTek. He's going to be doing lots of talks of NDI, and we will also be discussing that a lot more in depth too. So it's really, really quite flexible, and I think it's the way personally. Also, just to talk about, I'm just going to share my screen quickly on this one here. I'm on the wrong laptop, so if you can see my screen, we do dollies as well. So the dolly itself is a motorized dolly. In this example, we're using it in a live event, which they're commonly used. The great thing about this is that it can be controlled by the remote camera controllers, and you can build the tracks from 3 meters up to however long really you need, and they fit the PTZs on top, and they can fit into flight cases, and they can be taken around different events. And I've set up one myself. I'd say the most you need in terms of setting up the dolly and the rail itself is another person to help you load the tracks on. But the system itself is really, really good. It's really quiet, it's discreet. The one thing I will say is it's not really designed for really fast moving live event stuff. It's not for that. It's for creating really nice production value kind of shots of capturing speakers or things like this. It's being used in a lot of different situations at the moment, and there's like gyms have PTZ set up for remote live streaming. Peloton in the US are using PTZs for live streaming in gyms. I think they're using them all sorts around here as well. So yeah, and we do this solution too, and it's going into all sorts of situations. And now you can see my screen. So hopefully that explains with the dolly. And we are going to have some more videos and case studies actually explaining about the dolly track systems too, and how the PTZs work. And just another thing to say about this dolly, it supports virtual production. So you can use it in conjunction with the VR and applications. So you're going to see this a lot more in small studios or setups. I say it's also very good for Flyaway if you wanted to do a pop-up augmented reality or virtual reality set and then break it down. You can have the dolly moving and it can look very, 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 professional and clean. So that's another way of doing it.
Dean, there was a question on whether you can, whether you can have remote NDI cameras stream to a server and remotely switch using something like Vimeo's live stream software.
NDI cameras stream to server and remotely switch. I don't know inside the NDI cameras themselves that you can. It doesn't really matter actually. From what you're suggesting from a server and remotely switch, I don't know about switching inside the server. It depends if Vimeo's live stream software has a plugin for NDI. So I think actually there'll be a question from Vimeo. Nutek's API for NDI is open source. So if someone wants to implement something like that, it should be possible, but that's down to the platform itself. Our HLC 100s, I'll just bring up this one again. OBS would be very, very cool. The HLC 100 software, this can be controlled remotely now with an update that we've just done as well. So actually you can do NDI mixing. The switcher has to be running, but you could log into Google Chrome, at home with this running in the studio, and you could actually do mixing and control the mixer controller completely away from the scenario. So it's possible. So specific to Vimeo, I'd probably investigate and check.
Dean, there was another question on the max range on NDI.
Max range in terms of length, for the cable run, I'd probably say I'd keep to about 100 meters, absolutely maximum on a Cat 5e minimum cable. You would be tempting fate, to be honest, if you're running at 100 meters. So I couldn't say the quality would be excellent, depending, what might be interfering in those in that network run itself. But yeah, I would stay as a ballpark figure, 100 meters realistically to keep it safe. Maybe you're looking at about 50 to 70 meters, I'd say. But yeah, the NDI video itself, again, should be carrying just fine.
And Dean, how many PTZs would typically be controlled by one operator for a job?
I love this setup, to be honest, because Ollie, me and you have done many events. This scenario is very typical. It's super, super typical. 3 cameras, 3 PTZs. So anywhere between 3 and 5, I would say, depending on the scale of the event. But you can achieve, I would put 3 PTZs in a flight case. And then if you want to use robotics, you've got the Panapod already in a flight case, which it comes with, or you can just take a tripod additionally. And then I would just put in my monitors, and we use the HLC 100s. You can actually put it all into one flight case, this section here. You can put this all into one flight case if you wanted to. So you just open the lid, you've got the monitor, and you've got the controller and mixer, and then you can just apply your network ports and your outputs on the back of the case. So that's a pretty typical. This is a very bog standard setup. And the good thing is you could just do it with one camera, or you could expand it up and scale it however you want to. So your setup would evolve as you go on taking different jobs, and you can put everything else in between, which is again just highlighting this scenario here. It's to make your life easier and our lives as well.
And Dean, what about extending extensions of Cat5 cable runs as well?
Totally possible. You can get RJ45 extenders, RJ45 extender. So these, if you want to extend it, you can put on barrel connectors. Just be careful how many barrel connectors you are applying, obviously. But if you do need to get some more cables connected, it's no different to SDI barrels. Just treat SDI and network cables as very similar. They both run 100 meters. They both have extenders. So if you do need to do that, they're very, very cheap and they're very easy to do if you have some limited cabling.
What would be a
And
good
Dean,
ballpark?
Nick said there's asked what would the ballpark cost be of the sort of flyaway kit that we've just described here?
Oh, do you know, I'd contact your good friends at CVP for this one. So they'll be able to help you very, very kindly. I honestly, I couldn't really say because if I start putting in lots of different things, like, you know, I don't know if the robotics would be necessary for you in that particular situation.
It's
But you know,
scalable, isn't it? It's scalable at the end of the
it's
day.
totally scalable. Yeah,
Yeah.
The PTZs are pretty affordable. You can check on CVP now. If you're just, these are just HDMI or NDI-HX PTZs, you're, I don't know, RRP, I won't say. You can check, you can see. But they're pretty entry cost, you know. I'd say roughly for PTZs that are using these events are typically around 3K, but again, they vary in what they do in different setups. So we do have all the model numbers. Again, we'll give you the slide decks of this, and you can bundle it all yourself to see what model numbers appeal to you and what you think would be useful for your flyaway kit. I can say that the auto tracking software right now is on a 90-day free trial with the current situation, so you can download it. If you do have access to Panasonic PTZ kit, you can just test it or maybe request it and see if it works for you. But I do encourage to go check it out. So yeah, it's very scalable. You can do lots of things. You could just do this with a PTZ and start from there.
Awesome. I think there's a couple more questions if you guys wanna answer them before we sign off.
Go for it. With the remote setup through Chrome, does that show the panel or the stream? That would show the preview and program as well. So yeah, you can see it. What I'll do is I'll put the update in the slide deck for the distribution for you guys about that HRC 100 update. But yeah, you can see the entire panel. You can actually switch the channels, the 8 feeds, and you can also see the like the monitor of the preview in the program. It's very clever. So yeah, it's quite useful. Be nice to have SMPTE fiber, most likely mirrored that. The UE150 camera does support fiber connectivity on the PTZ. This particular camera is an absolute beast. This one here. It's got a fiber input on the back of the camera, and we can deliver 4K video 60p. So if you do have, like, you know, again, the guys in rental love it because you can send that over miles of cabling, a 4K video signal. So it's the only PTZ one that, again, I think only or one of the very few in the world that exists that do support fiber outputs as well. So yeah, you can do fiber, 12G SDI, 3G SDI, HDMI, and NDI-HX. You can take all those outputs and you can take them at the same time and deliver them to different sources out of one camera. So it's very unique.
Dean, what about extending beyond 100 meters through use of hubs and switches and conversions and that sort of thing?
Yeah, absolutely you can. And again, you know, this is how live events companies are operating today, because they have to have lots of different cable lengths and standards to try and reach. They're putting them up in galleys. We did a project with Disney Broadway Hits, and they were using a mix of PTZs, Vericams, and studio cameras, and they had all sorts of special extenders for network cabling, even HDMI. They had extenders, which was, I think, quite expensive, but taking 4K 30p signals down and running it over tens of meters. I think it was up to 50 meters maybe on that one. So yeah, there's all sorts in how they did it, and you could convert it into fiber and all sorts. So yeah, absolutely. And for the PTZs, for the HE130s that we do here, and get fiber extenders on the base. So it takes the SDI signal out and then it goes into fiber, and you can ingest that however you want to. That's using an Erica fiber support unit as well. Does SMPTE support Ethernet? SMPTE 2110 as a standard is going to support supports Ethernet, and also our products are supporting SMPTE 2110 as well. You're talking about SMPTE as well. For us, it would be SMPTE 2110 on specific units. I will say, guys, I mean, there's very few of us in here. Please do check out the NAB launch from us next week. There's going to be a lot of really cool, exciting stuff to talk about on there, which is going to be very relevant to the conversation that I've just had with you guys today. So yeah, you will see some really, really cool stuff. And that's on the 6th, isn't it, Ollie?
Yes, indeed. Yeah, it's at 4 p.m. next Wednesday.
4 p.m. next Wednesday.
Awesome.
I'll send the link on the chat.
Yeah, put it in Discord. Yeah, people to bookmark it or something. Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think, Adam, what you're talking about as well is they had Ethernet in the cable as well as power and SDI. Yeah, so there are ways of doing that. So you can even power over SDI with some products I've seen with third parties. But yeah, for us in the PTZ world and the Flyaway world, Ethernet just does so much now with stuff like NDI. It makes it a lot simpler and a lot more compatible.
Awesome. Well, yeah, I think we'll wrap it up there. We're just been going just over an hour now. So yeah, any other questions? Yeah, put them in either on the YouTube. You know, this video will be available live straight after we're done. You can put some questions in there. I'll give the link to Ollie and Dean to respond to any questions. And yeah, same in the Discord. Anything in there, pop them in there, and the boys will be able to get them.